Yeah, welcome everybody to Alaska Photographic Center, our monthly meeting. Tonight we have Seth Kantner tuning in from Kotzebue. And I'm just going to give a few announcements before we get started and before I introduce Seth. So yeah, tonight we have Seth Kantner. On March 21st, we have Bjorn Olsen giving a lecture. He's a Homer-based photographer and videographer and outdoor adventurer. So looking forward to that. Also we've got Rarefied Light coming up, the annual juried show. The juror is Jennifer Spellman this year. The open call for entries is March 6th. The call closes on June 7th. On July 13th at 7 p.m. we'll have a juror lecture, and she's giving a workshop. It's on Zoom. It's July 14th, 15th, and 16th. And it's entitled The Travel Portfolio as a Zine. So she's doing a zine making workshop on Zoom. So you'll be able to find out all that information on our website at www.akphotocenter.org. So tonight, as we said, it's Seth Kantner. He was born and raised in the wilderness of northern Alaska and homeschooled on the land. He's worked as a trapper, a commercial fisherman, a gardener, an adjunct professor, and has spoken nationwide and in Canada and taught in small and diverse schools. He won a Whiting Award winner for his debut novel, Ordinary Wolves, which also won a Milkweed National Fiction Prize, the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Award, Publishers Weekly Best Books, and other awards. He followed his fiction debut with a memoir, Shopping for Porcupine, which won the University of Alaska Books of the Year, and he is an author of a children's book, Pup and Pokey, and a collection of essays, Swallowed by the Great Land. He's a multiple Rasmuson Award winner. In 2018, he also was awarded a Whiting Creative Nonfiction grant for 1,000 Trails Home as a work in progress. His book, 1,000 Trails Home, is out now, and I believe we're going to see some images. I think we're looking at one of them right now. His writing and wildlife photographs have appeared in the New York Times, Smithsonian, Reader's Digest, Outside, and many other publications and anthologies. And he's been a columnist for Orion, the Anchorage Daily News, and Alaska Dispatch News. He attended the University of Alaska and University of Montana, where he earned a BA in journalism. A commercial fisherman for nearly 5 decades in Kotzebue Sound, he divides his home between, I'm going to need some help pronouncing this, Ponga, can you say it for me?
Ponoktork.
Okay, thank you. And Kotzebue, where his family lives and where I think Seth is right now. So just to repeat, everybody, if you please stay on mute. If you have questions during the program, please put them in the chat box, and either Jason or I will kind of interrupt at appropriate times to ask Seth or to read those questions to Seth. He told me, he mentioned he prefers questions during the program, and probably you may have some questions or comments at the end, which is fine too. But enough announcements. Let's hear from Seth Kantner.
Thank you, Michael. I guess I always go back to the beginning. That's kind of the way culture works here, is, you know, who's your parents and where were you born and raised, and that was here in the Northwest Arctic for me. And at that point it was I'm in Kotzebue right now, but it was 100 and some miles east of here on the Kobuk at Ponoktork, which is not far from Onion Portage, which is arguably the most renowned caribou crossing in the world or Western world. And caribou were the most important animal, and then all other animals were important for furs and food. And there was no thought in my mind or vision on the horizon of being a writer or a photographer. Certainly no feeling about being a doctor or a lawyer or any of that type of thing. And hunting was sort of a daily thing, as from a young age. Inupiaq hunters were stopping rarely, but if a traveler passed, they would stop, and all the stories were about hunting and animals and the land. And then as far as reading, we read, my brother and I, my family read most books we could get our hands on, but books were fairly rare, not real easy to get. And each year, of course, everything changed as far as modernity and everything. But anyway, that was the life I was born into. We had one Zeiss camera, and it was from before World War II. So it was Zeiss instead of Zeiss Icon, I guess, which is maybe the newer version. But and it was it wouldn't take pictures inside our Saudi glue because it's too dark, and it was expensive. Each roll of film cost a couple dollars or something, and money was pretty rare. So photography wasn't a part of my life either, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But caribou were, and the difference between then and now, as far as iPhone, and every time you see something beautiful, you snap a picture, feels surreal to me. But now I do that. So let me see if I can figure out how to go to the next slide. So Michael, in the long history of being a big techie and not knowing how to do this, I feel like you told me down arrows and that.
Right and left, probably.
I'm trying all of them, but it worked when we started. It's not now.
So click on your back, or click on your desktop or your image.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is my last image was let me see if I can go back. Caribou. And everything in my life, young life, was based on caribou. Not everything, but a lot of our lives. We slept on caribou hides. We used the sinew for thread. We made parkas out of the hides and mucklucks out of the legs, and ate every part, and used the antlers for handles. Mixed in there, which was the actual caribou living on the land, which I feel like when I started writing and photographing, I started noticing their lives more. And so this would be hunting, and you go to cut the head off a caribou, and suddenly you see all these botfly larvae in their throat. Well, the impulse was never to take a picture, waste of a slide, a piece of film, or on something gross. But that's been a change in this. Going from a hunter to a photographer and a journalist, I guess, is realizing the I'm hesitant to say the power of photography, but kind of how it all works together. I'm going to say more about that here in a second. And not that I'm fixated on bugs or anything, but most of the things that we saw as daily life didn't impress us. It was just life in the Arctic. And then later, when I started trying to write stories and everything, I begrudged every opportunity I'd missed to take a photo of what seemed too normal to waste a photo on. In the spectrum of things that you can that I learned later I could capture with photography, all the way from, worms and bugs to red dog mine, open pit mine. That was a slow process for me because I wasn't ever planning on being writer or photographer. So my upbringing was sort of backing into this field, and I don't know what it's like for other people, but I backed into photography because I was raised hunting and fishing every day of the year pretty much. And then as dog teams became less common, the need for so much protein sort of went away in my life as the world went from a hunting-based life here to a money-based life. I was sort of caught in that, flung along by that tidal wave of America arriving here on the frontier, and money being the new food. And so what I did at that time, which was, looking back, I realized at the time I didn't, was I kept hunting, I kept fishing, but all that extra time that I had that I didn't need to hunt every day, I started hunting with my camera. And I found it to be more arduous than hunting on the land, and in some ways more interesting. And the best example I have is if you sneak up on a otter or a bear or goose or whatever, and then you've been stalking this animal, and then you line up your gun and you decide it's time you're going to take your shot. As soon as your finger touches that trigger, everything changes. Boom. And the animal runs away, or you hit, or you missed, or you shot it badly. But with the camera, very often the animal wouldn't hear the click of your shot, and then you could sneak closer and closer, and you would never do that with a gun because you wouldn't want to screw up your shot by trying to get too close. Shouldn't say never, but seldom. And what the camera started showing me, photography, was that there was this whole other side of the relationship with animals and learning about them. And I use the example of an otter. One day I took my shotgun to go over to the pond to get a goose for dinner, and I took my camera, which I always carried everywhere at that time. And I got over there, and this otter started watching me, and then drilled down through snow into a crack in the ice, and came up, disappeared, and then came up with some blackfish and put them on the ice, went down, got more, and then gathered them all up in its mouth and swam over and gave them to me, put them next to me. Well, I kept taking pictures, but if I had been hunting, I would have fired a shot, and that whole relationship would have been over. And so that sort of photography opened up a world of hunting in a way to me that was really important to me. I do have to say that meanwhile, my life was being supported by the land. I never was deeply in part of the cash economy of the Western world, so I always knew that my wood would keep me warm, and there's water in the river for water, and caribou and moose and fish and all that to eat, and sell furs and sell salmon, and so reaching out to try to be a freelance photographer, freelance writer is I think I can assume that it'd be terrifying for a normal human, but I had the land to photograph, write stories about, and to support me while I was photographing and writing stories. So during that time, this is caribou walking by our old sod igloo where I was born. So I guess it's a perfect example of how multifaceted the wealth of the land was in relation to my efforts and so-called career, I guess. Is that a question I heard? During all this time that I was slowly moving towards photography and writing, I guess I want to back up a little. My family's parents never had regular American jobs in my life, and my dad basically was against the idea of having a steady job. And so he warned us as kids about, ice, danger of falling through the ice, and bears and moose and stuff. But high up on his list of dangers was a steady job. He saw that as a dangerous thing because I guess I'm extrapolating here, but that you have to give your life to the job instead of being out on the land living or doing whatever else you wanted to do. And then presumably once you have a job, I don't know, I haven't had one, but you start spending money and then you need to keep working. So I didn't have that in my life either. I only went to college hoping to find a girlfriend and then come back and be a trapper. And it was there at UAF where there was a brand new teacher named Peggy Shoemaker, who's now involved with Alaska writing, and I took creative writing. I never heard of it, and started writing stories, and she told me to go to Missoula, and that's where I took journalism and then photojournalism, and so it was this weird accidental evolution of moving strangely from this hunting life and then not believing in having a steady job to being a freelance photographer writer, which I argue is very much like commercial fishing, where you set your net and see what you catch, or set your traps, and trapping and hunting, where you never know what you're going to get. And that's what photography and writing have been for me. Here, Northwest Arctic, we've still now today, but each year diminishing, we've had pretty rich country for animals, pretty open country for traveling, hunting, taking photographs, just kind of being your own person out there. There's no roads and no speed limits, and nobody telling you whether it's dangerous or not. You're on your own, and that's been good for stories, good for photography, but it's no Denali. The animals here are heavily chased, shot at with AR-15s if people see them, and so photography here is very challenging. The cold and the conditions and then the fact that the animals are probably you're gonna get a picture of that animal's rear end as it flees away from you, and so yeah, it's a very challenging job, I guess. Not a job, but career or passion, I think is what it is. That bluff in the background is Pontotoc, but the bluff runs down to where I was born. So that was the word, Michael, that you were fighting with there on the introduction. And it's a high ridge on the north side of the Kobuk that sort of funnels the caribou to these crossing points. And so until the last couple of years, when caribou have the herd is greatly diminished and they've stopped migrating like they used to. In my most of my life, there's been thousands and thousands of caribou flowing through in spring and then in fall, and so in that sense, the bears and wolves run away when you're trying to point your camera at them, maybe, some of the other animals are kind of indoctrinated by hunters, pretty fierce hunters here. But the caribou were somewhat ubiquitous and like I said, important in my life, but also just this incredible photographic opportunity on a daily basis. Here along the Kobuk, where I grew up, it's right on the edge of tree line, so there's a lot of open tundra. A few miles to the north, there's no more trees, and so it kind of concentrates the animals, that edge of something. So there's a lot of bears, a lot of fish, and moose and caribou, and but then still very challenging to actually get a photo like this. I was driving a tiny little tin boat with my wife at the time and kid and a dog, and super tippy boat, and holding the camera above their heads while I clung to the tiller coming around a shallow spot, and managed to get this photo. But like many photographers, I guess I got thousands of useless photos along the way, cold fingers and wrecked equipment. One of the things that I mentioned earlier that I've been slow to get the hang of in my life, I guess, is that all the megafauna, like 1,000 caribou coming towards you, attracted me and my camera, and I'd run out there and try to get the shot. But the normal little everyday features of life were so normal that for years I never took pictures of them. And then later I'd get a request from a magazine or the Native Corporation wanted to make a calendar or something. Do you have a picture of meat hanging? And no, of course I don't have a picture of meat hanging. Who would ever want a picture of meat hanging? And cranberries and all sorts of stuff that felt too normal to take pictures of, slowly crept into my awareness, like, oh, maybe I can write a simple little story about picking cranberries, and where's my photos to go with it. And the same with commercial fishing. It was such a standard experience in my life that it never seemed like anybody would want a picture of fishing. And then later I ran into editors that wanted these stories. And I think if anybody's listening who's in this trying to be a freelancer, the idea of writing a story and having photos to go with it is pretty handy. So if you're the one writing and you don't have any photos, somebody else is probably going to get 50% of the meager pay for that story. And then it's just a lot more saleable if you can write and photograph the same thing. And I'm not talking about being too fancy with writing, that you can write pretty good story and not have to get all hung up on each sentence like I tend to. One of the other things that bugs me about my lack of taking pictures of the smaller, finer things over the years, because I've been doing this for a long time, is climate change. And so here, for example, the cranberry plants are 3 or 4 times taller than they were 30 or 40 years ago. And so those comparable photos of this place in 1980 and this place in 2020 are very, very handy items now too. And I wish I had more of those. So this is back to my upbringing, the entrance. We had a tunnel entrance to our sod igloo, and one window, which you can see there, and it's my mom holding my brother, and so long winters, and I guess really easy to think like, why would you ever want a photo of this? It shows just home. But then as the years went by, it's almost like the photos that I missed of climate change issues or small things. Who lives in a sod igloo now? A lot of times when I'm out, it's incredibly arduous to get my camera out. Very cold, and fingers are cold, and camera's cold, and there's snow blowing, and but there's something about the harshness that appeals to me, and I want to show it, and I want to show the this fox is out there looking for food too, and so I find, not to get too sentimental, but I find that photography is all those other things I've listed, but then for me it's I guess it's my ability to show the land the way I see it. And this is my home. I don't get excited about, I have no interest in going to Antarctica and filming penguins. I have no interest in writing stories about Hawaii, where my parents live. I don't know enough about it to feel qualified. So there's a connection between me and my home that the camera's a catalyst in that. Sometimes you just want to show something that that words are not going to do the job for. And so when I was taking these pictures of the Western Arctic herd, I don't think I'd started writing my caribou book yet. I just I couldn't help wanting to show how amazing the land and animals are here to me. I didn't have a exact plan. I just couldn't help wanting to show that. Okay, let me see if I can get another slide. Here we go.
Actually, Seth, we've got a question in the chat. To back up some, did you tend to see the quote normal visuals before documenting by photographic or writing, maybe an embedded path to evolve into?
Okay, that's too complicated for me. Tell me again what you said.
So I think what they're asking is whether or not you saw the visuals or saw them photographically or thought about them in writing first.
Oh, interesting. Photographically. It's been real separate for me. Photographing, I'm a physical person. I don't like using my brain. It's painful for me. I'm not good at it. I love taking pictures because it was more like hunting, where you tie all this crap on yourself and your snowshoes and you binoculars and pistol, and you head out looking for something. And so, but I can still answer that question in a different way. I would visualize I would randomly look for animals doing animal things. But I would also visualize a photo that I wanted, like the photo I wanted here, and I still haven't quite got it, is this stream of caribou coming from the end of the earth towards you. And I've definitely seen it. A lot of caribou come through, but the bad lighting or to whatever, you got there too late. And so I would imagine a photo that I wanted, which I think is a good thing to do as far as working towards something. And Michio Hoshino, the well-known Japanese photographer that was killed by a bear in Kamchatka, he used to come up and hang out exactly where this photo was taken with me. And he definitely believed in, visualizing this photo you wanted. and working to get it. Separate from that, the stories, I tend to write what I'm passionate about. I have no interest in writing stuff that I don't care about. Pretty much won't do it. But I think it was pretty separate. I would write something and then I would dig through my photos and see what I had and hope I had what I needed.
Great, thank you.
There's all sorts of things to say about photos. I think this photo got stolen by a well-known writer that I'm not going to say her name, but and then I saw her story about climate change or something. I was looking at the photo and I was like, damn, that, I mean, first of all, this is right behind my house. I knew that country, but then I realized that it was borrowed, and all that's a whole nother side of photography that's maybe I haven't talked about those sides of things, but it's certainly discouraging. And then now I find the whole technical part to be I'm just really bad at computers and everything to do with computers. And so a lot of what I was describing in the first part of what I'm talking about was more snowshoes, mechanically old cameras with slide film, and then a hunter would pass the igloo there, and I would give him my roll of film in one of those mailers that went off to Page Mill Road in Palo Alto, and then some other hunter would check mail in the village and bring me my slides 2 months later, and it was all very hands-on. Everything from taking the picture to holding those slides up to the light. And so the modern digital life of photography is incredibly different to me, and then has pretty much made so I've stopped photography because I'm not good at the digital side of things, and that's another subject. So back in the day, and it would have been nice if I would have been able, speaking of technical skills, would have been able to show this slide when I first started talking instead of halfway through, but that's the way my skills are. So this was our cache and sod igloo over there to the right, which is basically a pile of moss with a little cave under it. And then fish racks that once fall came, you know, take the dried fish off of there and put caribou hides to dry. And this would fall into many categories, but one definitely being the category of why take a picture? That's just a normal occurrence of hanging caribou hides. And that, I think, is falls into the category of this incredible change we've experienced here in the Arctic of climate change and then cultural change, and you just don't see any of this happening anymore. And so every one of those old photos that I can borrow or have or actually took are incredibly valuable to me now. And it's hard to figure that out because the iPhone makes so I take a ton of photos, which is exact opposite of the slide film days. But then knowing what to keep and what will have value has been pretty blurry to me. I feel like I've always been a little behind on the what photograph will have value. Photo like this, I think I used to do a lot of traveling in the Arctic, long trips, looking for photographs, but also furs, you know. But a photo like this, I just took because it's pretty, but it didn't seem to have any value. But then when I started doing these slideshows, it became very valuable because it shows the difference between cultures. So the Inupiaq culture here is all about living off the land. And so there is, traditionally anyway, there was very little tourism or, oh, wow, what a beautiful mountain. And that was not taking place. It was, is there any firewood? are there any animals? Are there any berries? Is there any animal tracks here? So no, 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 and thank you. There's nothing to talk about here. And that those differences, cultural differences, started playing into my writing, and then my photography could sort of back up what I wanted my words to say. And I found the same thing with giving, if I had to give a talk in Sitka or New York City or wherever, Toronto, if I had these photos to tie my words together, it all held my stories in place, but held me in place, so I could not sort of lose my world when I was out there, if that makes any sense. This is another one of those old photos. I didn't take this one. It's my family in probably 1969 in the village. So my dad had, hitched up the dogs and take 1 or 2 days to get to the village. And I have this, photo in Shopping for Porcupine, my second book, but I really wanted to use it in my Thousand Trails home book. And there's all sorts of reasons why it might work or not work, but my mom would sew our clothes, fur clothes, and there's a lot of concern about traveling along the trail with little kids, and so if your mittens fall off when you're on the trail, your parents are going to see the little kid with the frozen hand. And anyway, so she made these mittens and sewed them to our parkas, and we couldn't take them off, so you were stuck in there. And then she also made them without thumbs, so it's easier to make and warmer. When my Caribou book came out, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I can take credit for basically knowing what it's like to have hooves. This the sheer frustration of being a kid tied into a dog sled, and you couldn't take your mittens off, and you had no thumbs. And so all these little photos that were really random and not sort of planned for have steered my stories, contributed to my stories, kind of tied it all together for that journalistic effort, I guess. I took this 2 nights ago, and I feel like I'm getting caught on this theme of don't miss out on things. But when I was in journalism school, they said, snap your shot, whatever it happens to be, whether it's a Persian Gulf War protest or a grizzly bear downing a moose, whatever it is, snap your shot, and then start thinking about different angles and trying all sorts of different things. And so that side of actually classroom instruction, which is kind of rare in a lot of my life, I guess, proved really useful for me. I really took that to heart, and the things I'm interested in, I end up snapping a shot of, and then starting to think about different angles and stuff. And so this was 2 nights ago. I was coming back from hunting muskox a long way south of here in a pretty open country, and this is the shelter cabin, where you're supposed to be able to take shelter and survive the storms on the coast there. It's pretty rough country, and so I just snapped a shot, and then started taking some other shots that are on my camera now that I'll probably end up writing a story about, because we just had 2 kids, 2 young guys freeze to death here, and well, one froze and one lost 3 limbs, I guess. But So the impulse to chronicle things, I guess, is a big part of my photography too. Where are we at here? I'm not good with all the buttons on these new phones or new cameras and phones. I wish I was. I think lately I'm using this D800, I think is what it is, and it's got all sorts of features that I don't know how to do any of it. I just put it on manual and try to slide the speed down when I want snow to be moving, and try not to get blurry photos from handshake and stuff, or camera shake. And so I think I'm better at trying different angles and working hard and being out there than I am at any of the technical stuff that the modern Photoshop can do to your photo, or the camera itself can do. I'm just incredibly bad at all of that stuff. This is back to the old sod house, and and it's not my photos, but once again, super valuable. So a photo like this I find to be incredibly valuable, and it's not because of the people. It shows the country, and this, I mentioned this 10 or 12 minutes ago. This is open tundra, and if you move forwards, I don't know if I'm going to have the right pictures here. I don't think I do, but this tundra is now full of spruce trees and dwarf birch and alders, and it's not tundra anymore. It's a forest, and this was 1968, I think, or 67. And so we're getting close to, oh gosh, am I that old? 60 years ago. And the amount of vegetation change with the climate change is mind-boggling. And so once again, that's the type of photo I wish I had more of, where I had comparison photos. This is the same spot. You can see the cache and spruce trees starting to grow. But I don't have the sequence because I screwed that up. But I have a sequence of photos that show the amount of vegetation growth. So I don't want to run out of time for questions. I don't know if I got the time right here, but it looks like we're getting close to the time. So Michael, you can press whatever buttons you need to burst in with people asking questions.
So folks should be able to unmute themselves if they've got questions.
Yeah, why don't you do that? If anybody's got any questions, I can keep babbling about the same things, but basically I spend a lot of time out in the country and see things that I feel like, I guess things that draw me. I try to photograph, and then maybe later is when I write the story about it. This is back to my youth. That was me as a 4-year-old, and once again, real different life, but also I guess I'm real grateful to have 1 or 2 photos from those years, and not me, it was on my mom's camera, but once again, me in the old days there. So why don't you open up for questions there, Michael? I don't want to run out of time. I could show caribou photos from the end of time.
Feel free, folks, to yeah, Maggie, got a question?
Oh, I have a lot of questions. I'll keep it to one for now, but yeah. So my name is Maggie. I'm in Fairbanks here, and I just had a question. So I've been a photographer now about 10 years. And I also work in fisheries research in Alaska. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts about whether or not there's still a place in the world right now for folks that don't have necessarily kind of the creative writing skill set. I'm like I said, I'm more of a scientific writer, and that's more of a strength of mine. So just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Maggie, as of last night, talking to Fairbanks, I think I'm going to teach a 3-day writing workshop in Fairbanks, March 6th, 7th, and 8th through the university. So if you're interested in that, I'm not convinced I have much to teach, but I'm going to do it. And I think maybe the March 7th in Fairbanks, I'm going to do a science and lecture series for Ken Tape about beaver here in the Arctic. And then the 8th, I think, wow, crap, I can't remember. I think that's the 7th, and then with Ken, and then the 8th, I think I'm doing a community slideshow and reading where it's a lot of these same photos, sadly enough, in Fairbanks. So anyway, to answer your question, did you say, is there a place for...
Yeah. I just feel like it's, the world of photography has seemingly gotten more and more competitive. And it seems like now you're more likely to either get a job or get a gig if you have, both the creative writing skill set and photography skill set. So I was curious if you're curious about your thoughts about whether or not you felt like there was still room for folks like myself that really are only kind of fully invested in photography and not so much the writing side of things.
Oh, wow. So I don't think there's room for me, let alone anything else. I make so little money writing, and I commercial fish for a living. But yeah, I don't know what I would do if it was the only thing I did for a living and I didn't have a source of meat and other things. But so I think I might be the wrong person to ask that. I don't like the competitiveness of photography. If you go back, I was 18 years old when I went to UAF looking for a girlfriend and not any of this. And I just turned 58 a couple days ago. So basically that's 40 years ago. And in the intervening years, halfway along that trail, I found writers to be incredibly helpful to each other, and photography, nature photography, especially, to be more competitive, like competing with each other instead of helping each other. Not completely, but I didn't necessarily like that difference. I still haven't answered your question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't like counting on a living from either of these. So I want to write and photograph what I care about, and I don't want money to make me have to do something. And so one of the debts that I work to repay is my debt to the land, because the land has given me stories, given me photographs, but given me that lack of pressure. And I don't know what I would do if I lived in Fairbanks or Chicago or something, and I had a monetary pressure that said you can't frig around with these freelance things very long before you're broke. And so I'm not answering your question other than saying I don't know. I think if I can write, anybody can. I'm dyslexic and confused and can't spell and never could do phonics and everything else. So if you can write science writing, I would argue that you can creative write as well as I can. You just have to tweak it a little. And then photography, I think that's why I beat the dead horse so much about taking pictures you don't suspect you're going to need, because you can write a story about picking cranberries and it can be good. It doesn't have to be hunting elephants or something.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
if you have more questions, ask them. I like questions, although I don't know if yours is a very easy one.
Yeah, so Seth, if you want to forward on the information about your upcoming talks to either me or Michael, we'd love to distribute that information as well. We've got Matt Johnson with a question.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Seth, for your talk. It's amazing. The photos are well. Let me back up a bit. I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I think we might be about the same age. I might be a little older than you, actually. I know what you mean when you say, "Wow, am I that old?" And when I look back at photos of our childhood and my cousins, there's kind of a sameness, not really a sameness to your photos. We were always in South Central Alaska, but we come from a fishing family, and there was a lot of that. So outdoors all the time and doing things that a lot of kids just don't do anymore, or even back then in the 60s, they most kids weren't doing the kind of things that we were doing. So anyway, that was kind of fun for me to see your stuff. And the one other thing is I saw your photo of the caribou crossing the river swimming on the wall at our friend's house, Mary Beth and Andy Coster, who I guess, I don't know if you remember them, but they lived up there, or Andy was a pilot, or.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think my wife at the time and I might be the responsible for them having kids, because we had one and we drug it everywhere.
Oh, right.
They were like, "Oh, I didn't know you could have kids and drag them along."
Lead by example. So, and then just coincidentally, Mary Beth is coming over here to spend the night at our house because she's in town from Seward. And so I get to tell her my story that I got to somewhat meet Seth Kantner over the Zoom.
Oh,
And
neat. Oh, yeah, I ran in. Yeah, they were great friends, and it was, living here in Kotzebue, it's tragic because people leave. Well, I'm sure it's that way everywhere, but you meet people here and they leave. And yeah, it was tragic when they left. And we sure had a lot of fun with those folks. And then they moved to Anchorage, but then they moved to Seward, which is a little more off the beaten path.
Yep. We've spent a lot of time down at their house in Seward when our kids were doing Mount Marathon, and so yeah, they're great people. And I just want to say thanks for your presentation. And I think that quality of the landscape. I've never been up in that part of the country. I've never been to that part of Alaska, and it's just so dramatic. And so in some of those images are so spare. It's so simple and stark. And there's beauty in that, as I know you know that. So
I just the storms right now, it's so stormy I can't get out the door, but I really like the starkness and the harsh. Taking pictures in storms is really neat here, and the ice and then Maggie, I got to tell you, this picture was taken from a Super Cub. Can you believe that?
all right. Well, thank you, Seth, for your presentation.
I
It's
feel
awesome.
bad admitting it, but so anyway, there's all different chances with photography.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, who's this?
Shelley Schneider.
Hi, Shelley.
Hi. I have a question because I understand that you were many of these images were quite, a long time ago. Are these from Transparencies?
Like, I don't know what's on your screen, but this picture of the caribou leaping between ice pans is a Transparency. This one's digital. This is digital. Lots of caribou. Is that on your screen?
So one of my questions is that because I have kind of a very similar, well, I wasn't born here, but I lived in the bush for 3 years with no electricity, running water, hunted moose for meat, that kind of thing, isolated. And it was fly-in only. And, my husband and I were there for 3 years. And, but my question is, were all these Transparencies, and did you digitize your Transparencies to put them on this show or whatever lectures you do?
This is all digital now. I would say probably 2/3 of what I played tonight were taken with a digital camera. So
And the rest of it, how did you deal with your transparencies in terms of digitizing them?
So 25 years ago, I think I had a Nikon Cool Scan slide scanner. I found it to be pretty hard. For some reason, I feel like I've regressed in my computer abilities, or maybe I'm throwing a hissy fit. I don't know. I just I've gotten a lot worse with computers. And so I have a whole lot of slides that I never ever look at. I don't even know where they are. And then I have a huge amount of digital files that I don't know where they are either. I for years threatened to just give them to some stranger on the bus. Anybody, please take this shit. Because I don't know how to do that Photoshop stuff and all that.
I'm very similar, and I'm in that same place.
Yeah, and it's I did Photoshop at one point 20 years ago, and I played with those little sliders and stuff, but it just got a little bit too much for me, I guess. And so now I have this joke that I say is that I have pictures of 70,000 caribou in one image on my camera. I don't know how to download my photos anymore. So I just, when I see a bear mating with a moose, I just quickly delete the 70,000 caribou. So I have room on my camera for one more picture. And then when I see something more impressive, I delete the bear and moose.
You need to get a phone that holds more images.
I don't take, well, I'm living in the shack now. Things are a little complicated.
Yeah, well, it's like I have like 120 film, images that I printed and stuff, but I need to digitize so I either photograph the photographs that I've printed, or I go back to the negatives and digitize those and then create them from that, so I'm just wondering how you have handled that.
Yeah, and I should find a place in where you send them out, but I haven't done that. And I think interestingly enough, that the interesting part of this conversation is that life is just busy, and it makes it hard to sort it all out. And I suspect that if 25 years ago, the reason I was able to scan and figure that stuff out is I didn't have the other stuff going on. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your presentation.
So, Vivian, you've got a question? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Vivian.
Awesome. So sorry if you've already kind of addressed this. I came into the recording a bit late because my Zoom decided to update. So my question is, basically, I can't imagine you do a whole lot on social media. So how do you go about getting your photos out into the world? Or do you just like rely on galleries and writing, or just straight up just don't care too much about that?
Vivian, if you can press a button to put yourself on the screen, that would be neat to see who you are. But I did some social media when Thousand Trails Home came out, or I was told I needed to. That's when I signed up for Instagram, I guess. And some of that stuff, I despise it. I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable.
I'm in the same boat. I don't like technology. I don't like technology, even though I'm young. I don't like social media, but I like to share stuff sometimes, just not a whole lot.
I don't have anything against putting something on Facebook and saying, this is where I went last week, and boy, the weather was bad or something. But to do it to try to get people to like me or buy something bugs me, or makes me feel crappy. I don't like it. And so, yeah, just if I put this picture of ptarmigan on Facebook, I would be happy. I love ptarmigan. They're neat little guys. But if I'm trying to harvest something from other people, that is not my thing. And
Mm.
so to answer your question, no, my photos don't, I don't sell photos hardly ever. I'm not getting very, I think people assume that I'm making a living with writing and photography, and they're totally wrong. And so a lot of what drove my writing and photography was the desire to get a picture of a lynx and write about what it was like to trap lynx and eat lynx and everything else. But the financial part and the being an expert at Instagram and all these followers or something, I'm not that person. I'm just I'm not. And so the question that I think her name was Maggie asked, I'm the wrong person to ask those questions because I don't think I'm good at any of it.
I think you're the perfect person to ask though, because you do something to make beautiful pictures, and somehow we know about you here now. So
yeah, and then everyone's I will say that that writing has been and photography has been a lot like commercial fishing and trapping, where you know, I won the Whiting Award twice, and they pay $40,000. And so there is the time when something steps in your trap, or you set your net in the right spot. And so I shouldn't be completely disparaging of this field, but as far as a photographer that's busy making magnets and calendars and selling you know, 10 by 12s and 20 by 30s, that's not me.
well, sounds
Uh,
good.
Gail?
Oh, so, yeah, so I was just, curious about the caribou herd. I know that that herd has diminished in size, and I see these photos that you have, especially some of the aerial views that have an impressive amount of caribou in them. And so I'm just wondering how that, are those older pictures, or was the herd just that much bigger back in the older days?
Oh, wow. Never ask me about caribou unless you got lots of
Oh,
time.
sorry, I'm a biologist. I'm really curious about it.
So the herd has been dropping, and it's been written up a bunch, I think, in ADN and stuff. So the numbers are pretty well publicized. I think 164,000 now is the new number. It's super interesting because so I grew up with these old stories of no caribou, and it was it sounded like nonsense to me because I was born just as the herd was coming back through, and there was always caribou and then more caribou. And then throughout my young life, I'm going to say mid 80s to 2005, those or even 2010, there were so many caribou we couldn't think straight. I find it to be incredibly interesting because what happens to humans when there's a lot of stuff? We get spoiled, we get unappreciative, we expect a lot. And you can talk about Costco or a farmer with the apples falling off the trees, and then they don't eat the ones with the worm in it. And you know, a human reaction to wealth is pretty interesting. And so I just think it's very interesting now, the way I've been warning about the Ambler Road and this giant industrial project they want to push in here, these mines. Well, the warning was what would happen to caribou. The interesting thing is that the caribou numbers dropped before the mine. And so now people have gotten a vision of the future before the mines or whatever could destroy the caribou. With climate change and other things that are pushing the caribou down. I'm pretty blunt. I think local hunting practices have been really out of hand and really hard on caribou. I think mixed with climate change, which has made the herds travel later in the fall, which makes so they don't get here when people can hunt bulls, because once they rut, the meat stinks. So then everybody shoots cows, which get chased by snowmobile instead of boat. And so it's led to this high cow mortality, which is, essential to the growth of the herd. And so a lot of the handwriting, a lot of the reality is sort of in front of us, but then we got race relations of, native versus outsider and white people, whatever. And then the biologists can't, they can't hear the biologists can't do biology without 60% politics or 78% politics and 22% biology. And so it's kind of a shit show. And I think the only thing that's going to bring our appreciation and value level of caribou back up is that lack of caribou. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, completely.
And I think like Costco is a pretty good example, because I love Costco, and you go to Costco and they got all this crazy food and the prices are great. Well, if Costco suddenly you got there and it's nothing, empty parking lot, then, the appreciation and the like, oh, wow, that was great while it lasted feeling would grow. And so, I don't know, maybe I'm warped from being here too long, but I look at everything in a sort of a warped sort of way. So
No,
the
I
caribou,
think I agree with a lot of what you said. I think you're right. I think until the local hunters can respect them a little bit more, than it's not
yeah,
gonna.
well, it's many things, it's climate changes.
Climate change is a huge thing. Yeah.
Terribly hard on caribou, and then and so we should be extra good to them, and for years we've been not. And
Right.
and so yeah, I didn't completely answer the last lady's question, and maybe it was Vivian, or I had it lodged in my mind that I left something unsaid there. Well, I lost it.
Seth, I had a thought as you were answering both those questions about career stuff, about becoming a photographer, or should you write? And kind of like what I heard you say was, do what you love and do it long enough and you will succeed.
Oh, I think you're in dangerous territory. You're 100% right, other than the fact that I'm very suspicious of the word success. Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you weigh success against the American definition, the standard American definition of it, you're in danger. I grew up with success means fat meat. So if you shoot a skinny caribou, you're very unsuccessful, even though you still fired the same bullet. And so if you can be careful of the word success and not have it mentally step on your neck, yeah, you're totally right.
I have a question. It's a writing question. I love your book, Ordinary Wolves, and it seemed to be kind of a, semi-autobiographical or at least drawn from your upbringing and your life. And then you, I think, I haven't read everything you've written, but kind of stay in the nonfiction realm now. Are there any thoughts of writing fiction? Are you writing fiction, or was it?
That's another quagmire. Ask that question, but I'm going to try not to get too tangled up. I'm not convinced I'm good at fiction. Ordinary Wolves I just ran my life through the meat grinder and then sort of patted it back together, but it's pretty much my life. And I have a book I wrote. It took maybe 10 years, and Harper Random House has it. It's about a school shooter, and then after that there was a school shooting in Florida, so they never published it, but they said it was too real. They want me to rewrite it, and I wrote it as fiction, but it was, as usual, is true. So yeah, I think I might just plain old not be good at fiction. Having said that, I think I'm bad at the arcs of tension and all that. I do like dialogue. I do like humor. I do like really concise descriptions. Anybody that's listening and wants to write anything, I would go out or you don't have to go out, you can press the buttons on Amazon and buy The Pastures of Heaven by John Steinbeck, a little tiny book, and read those short stories. His ability to put you in the story in just a few paragraphs, few sentences is what it's all about, as far as whether it's nonfiction or fiction. The ability to put you in this place, and I may end up writing more fiction in the future because I've so little interaction with the people nowadays that I'm running out of those essays that I used to write, which would involve nature, big country, and then some Inupiaq hunter traveling through that country. Or so yeah, I think I've all my fiction has been based around nonfiction.
Do you have less interaction with people now? Is that a COVID thing or
Oh
some
no,
other
I
factor?
think COVID is comical because everybody talks about all this isolation. I'm like, oh man, you're describing my life way before COVID. When my books came out, a lot of people here decided I was a billionaire, and then interactions became more complex and less good. I don't know. There's been a lot of things, but I have very little. I'm kind of a hermit nowadays.
Matt, you've got a question?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump back in real quick. When you talked about Seth, when you talked about the Pastures of Heaven, John Steinbeck book, holy cow, I've not heard of that book. John Steinbeck is my #1 favorite author, and I've never heard about that book, so I'm gonna go buy it tomorrow.
Oh,
And then the other quick thing, go to Tidal Wave. Tidal Wave is my Costco, but my wife goes to Costco. Anyway, you were talking about how you can't find your photos. You got a bunch of awesome images, but they're sort of in the cloud, or they're in a box. And that seems like an amazing resource. And I don't want to overstep my bounds, but golly, wouldn't it be awesome to get that stuff cataloged and organized, and maybe get a Rasmuson grant or something to have somebody just do it, somebody who is good at that stuff. I don't know if that's of any interest to you, but it would seem like to preserve that would be awesome.
It's totally of interest to me. I had a good fishing season a few years back, and I paid somebody to organize it, and it didn't turn out real well. You would type in swan, and up would come this chicken of Hawaii, and so it wasn't perfect. And of course, I wasn't the one typing in swan because I didn't know how to use Lightroom. But yeah, so I really want to do exactly what you say. It's not overstepping any bounds. I would be thrilled to pay somebody to do it. I just don't know who. Separate from that, I'm going to be at Tidal Wave on the 28th in the afternoon, signing books, I guess, on my way to Talkeetna to do a CPR class. And you said one other thing at the beginning there.
I don't remember, actually, just that Steinbeck.
Pastures of Heaven. So yeah, I really like Steinbeck for that same reason. I really like a lot of his stories. I find his ability to describe humans, and especially East of Eden, just amazing. but yeah, I had somebody else tell me they hadn't heard of Pastures of Heaven, and I like it because small, easy to carry, but then good examples of getting into a story quickly, which is incredibly hard. Putting words down and then having it just be confusing. And I'm going to step out of photography for 10 seconds and say that my writing, some of the things that I don't think of myself as a good writer. I just think I work too fanatically long and hard on each sentence. But the writing, I have this phobia of wasting anybody's time, boring them or confusing them. And if you put everything through that filter of being terrified of wasting somebody's time, boring them or confusing them, then by the time it goes through those filters, it's better. And then the other thing is it true? Are you saying something that's true? And I have no interest in writing bullshit. And so when it comes to the land or the animals or caribou or anything, I want, or even the sound of ptarmigan at a mile away at cold weather, I want it to be absolutely true. And so those filters, if you run it through that funnel with the tight weave filter of 3 or 4 different things, and yeah, you end up with something that usually at least says it how it is.
One more quick question, Seth. The 28th, is that next Tuesday?
Oh,
February?
heck, who knows? I can't keep shit straight. I know it's the 28th.
I'll Google it. I'll find you.
Yeah, it's a tidal wave. Hey, Maggie, did you have a little, I started realizing that little yellow hand. Does that mean you're,
Yeah, so I do have one more question, and then I'll cut it off at that for myself. This one's a much more simple question. I'm just curious if you, when you were first starting out, or even now, if you had any kind of mentor for photography, writing, or otherwise, that you had worked with, and if you're willing to share, just kind of what that relationship looked like, and if you feel like that's something that you'd recommend seeking out.
Oh, interesting. So you can, if you have questions, you can email me I'm at sethkantner@yahoo.com, and or I have a website too, I guess, sethkantner.com. But so you can, if you have more questions you think of later. I really admired Michio Hoshino, and he came to me in the sense that he came north to the Kobuk Valley and wanted people to show him around, one of them being me. And so I really liked his love of the land drove his desire to photograph it in a way that showed the land. And I knew another photographer at the time that every bear would be in the middle of the photo with trying to get as close as possible with a portrait of the bear's head. And I found those photos to be incredibly boring, and Michio's to be like the bear and the country. And then as far as writing, I guess what ended up happening with me was I did go to writing conferences, a few, and I usually, read who the guests were, and if it was somebody I liked, I made more effort to get plane fare and conference fees and whatever it costs to go. Those weren't always wonderful, but I think they really helped because they surrounded you with other writers, and I kind of differentiated between the wannabes, which myself and others were, the trying to be writers, and then the staff or faculty that would be, so-called big shots that weren't always big shots, but just that camaraderie and the information about agents and talk about struggles and how do you do this and that. It just felt good to come from basically this barren wilderness of no writers, and most of the people I talked to didn't even read or couldn't read, and to go to a writing conference where writing was the emphasis and important, and all the little pitfalls were some people had experienced them and could share information. So yeah, I didn't have, I don't think I had as strong, I think the writers, well, I should rephrase that. Like Louise Erdrich has always been a hero of mine. I never went to a writing conference where she was, and I didn't meet her till years. I met her sister before her. So, but she was a hero of mine. I just didn't rub shoulders with her or get to hear her speak or anything. I don't know if that answered your question again.
Yeah, it sure did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, one more, sorry, super fast question. So the I believe it's a 3-day workshop at UAF that you're putting on. Do you have a rough estimate for a time commitment for that?
Sorry to look at the phone, that's really insulting, but the idea just started last night.
Okay.
And it would be a couple hours on the 6th and the 7th and 8th, with a chance to Zoom afterwards with further questions. And each day is different hours, I think, because of I don't get to Fairbanks till 1 p.m. on the 6th. And so I think it's like, anyway, shoot me your email and then I can let you know when I find out
Sounds
more
good.
about.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any other questions, folks?
Just
I
a
just-
comment. Just a comment. I love Michio Hoshino's work as well, and he has that one classic, like it just blows me away, that his caribou image, the one single tiny caribou in the frame with all the melting snow in the background. You know that one?
Yeah, so that was what I was trying to describe is Michio had that little animal in the big country pretty well, and he'd make sure your eye found the animal. It didn't have to search, and yeah, really neat abilities.
I also I love how he writes about nature and photography as well. You know, for a guy whose second language was English, I don't know, just very poetic and very deep the way that he.
I've gotten incredibly lazy about writing stuff down, but Michio every night would sit there and write stuff down from the day, which is amazing, really. And then his stories were very simple about these characters in all across Alaska, but yeah, I think he just it was kind of a boiled down, truthful, honest view of what he saw with his camera and his words. And I used to write down things that people said, the sound of a seal barking or whatever, and little things that I thought were humorous or well said or caught my attention in a little notebook or a napkin or whatever the heck. And I think almost like photography, I ended up with felt like my brain was too full and I was overwhelmed and too many little notebooks of little tidbits. But those are incredibly important for good stories, is writing that stuff down. It doesn't have to be much. It's and then the reality is if a 20-year-old woman says this statement, you can stuff it into the mouth of an 80-year-old guy in your fiction. So every little concise statement that catches your ear doesn't have to be put back into the mouth of the same person, if that makes sense. So that's back in the realm of fiction, but
Yeah, thank you.
well, I don't want to bore anybody with too many details, but feel free to contact me and then look me up if you're at Anchorage when I am, or Fairbanks.
Thank you so much, Seth. That was really great.
Okay, good. Yeah, don't trust anything that guy says later in March, that Bjorn. Don't trust anything he says.
Yeah. Looking
Seth,
forward
thank
to
you
it.
so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay, good night, you all.
All right.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Seth. Fantastic.
Thank
Thanks.
you.